Welcome to Your Questions Answered with Father Gruner. I'm John Veneri, and this is a program in which Father Gruner answers questions that you send in. You can send them in via email. The email address is questions@thefatimacenter.com. We've been dealing with a lot of questions regarding Fatima. We do have other questions regarding other aspects of the Catholic faith that we will get to in the future, but right now we're answering a series of questions regarding the consecration of Russia, the fact that it's very clear that this consecration has not been done. And of course, a number of people wrote in and said, it's just a 5-minute prayer. Why don't the popes do it? Why has no pope done this fulfilled the simple request that Our Lady requested?
It's a very valid question. I've sometimes asked that question myself, and I still ask the question myself ultimately. But let's first of all understand that there is a reason that everyone can understand. It's not a good reason, but it's a reason, which is the devil knows that when this consecration is done, his empire on earth is over. And the devil knows to cause diabolical confusion in the minds of popes and bishops and cardinals and lay people and journalists and leaders of Fatima apostolates that don't get it right. He causes confusion, diabolical disorientations, Sister Lucy called it, by people who especially have high responsibility in the church. So the devil, it's not his only trick, diabolical disorientation, but it's certainly one of his tricks. Has been very effective up to now. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but the devil certainly wants to stop it because he knows he's going to lose once.
It's kind of like Father Fahey would point out. There's the supernatural, the preternatural enemy, and then there's the ones who are bodily on earth, I guess. That's...
Well, so we have to take our fight, as St. Paul tells us, is not against flesh and blood, but against spirituality, principalities and powers. That is the principality powers of this world of darkness. That is of the devil. So we have to we can't lose sight of that, because if we do, we're going to find it. So that's why prayer and sacrifice is so important, so that the Pope gets the grace he needs, so the bishops get the grace they need, so the faithful and so the journalists and so the leaders of Fatima apostles get the grace they need to be on the side of the angels instead of working for the devil. They think they're working for the devil. They think they're working for God, and they're working for the devil often. But so first reason is the devil in his influence. I remember asking Father Kramer that day, one day when I was in Scotland, and he said, that's the proof the devil exists. After all, they got everything to gain and nothing to lose, and they don't do it. It really, it boggles the mind when you think of it. We're spending over $1 trillion. I mean, the American government statistic is not that they're the only ones, but they're all bankrupt, and they're spending $1 trillion and more on armaments and defense for the year. They could stop this. They have their families are separated. They can bring their boys home and their girls home, and they can be at peace. And the same thing and to put it the other way around, the people they've got their armies in 140 nations.
But don't the popes know this? Why don't they do it? I mean, that's the why not? What's the problem?
But you see, that's the diabolical disorientation. The second thing is this. I know that I think it's a great article that, in fact, Mrs. Catherine Pearson wrote 2 articles for us in the Fatima Crusader. And her second article, which was her presentation at our Fatima Challenge 2010, she explains in it that there are 6 possible reasons, and she gives reasons why the Pope would not do the consecration. And she continues, she goes through the 6 reasons, and she eliminates 5 of them. And she says, well, this really is not a reason, and she explains why. And she goes through, there are apparent reasons, and we can go through each one of them, but she comes to the 6th reason, which she says, I don't have an answer for this one. This one is most likely why.
And what is that one?
He's been threatened. He's been threatened in a way which is hard for, first of all, hard for any people to understand, because it takes a very evil kind of person to make such a threat. It's so I'll give you an example. It's not a threat about his person, that is, that they're just going to kill him or something like that. I'm not saying that such a thing couldn't exist, but the kind of threat we're talking about is a threat of magnitude of, say, putting to death millions of people. I'd like to explain how that can be. For example, Joseph Torellia, who's a prisoner of conscience from 1963 to 1987, he told me that the KGB officer in charge of him, the colonel, told him that he was released sometime in 87, but the Chernobyl took place in 86. And what happened in Chernobyl is that thousands, if not millions of people died with this nuclear reactor going off. And the KGB colonel explained to him that we put these reactors among the populated areas. And why we did that, this high communist official, why would he say this to this man? Because he knew that Troadia was supposed to be killed in the prison. The sentence of death had been pronounced in the prison system to kill him. They had already attempted his life more than once. So he didn't mind telling him, because he figured he's not going to be able to tell anybody anyway. It turns out that Troadia was released sometime after that. But this KGB colonel said, we put up the nuclear reactors in populated areas. We could have put them all up in Siberia and wired the electricity down. We didn't do that. We put them in populated areas so we can control the population. If they get out of hand, we just let off one nuclear reactor. If that doesn't do it, we'll do another one. So why do I say this in the context of this story? Is I think that John Paul II was threatened that would happen to Poland, his beloved Poland, if he did the consecration. Now the answer to that very simply is, Our Lady is more powerful than nuclear reactors. I mean, she's proven that in Japan, when she's saved 8 men less than half a mile from ground zero. She saved them. They never had any radiation. Their house was still left intact, and none of them died from radiation or the effects of the bomb or anything, because Our Lady protected them. So Our Lady will protect her dear ones, as Sister Lucia said. But that is a kind of threat. Now, what kind of threat is being used against the present Pope? I don't know.
We don't know. Yes. Well, that helps explain part of it. I understand too that there were problems with in communist countries, that there was a threat of persecution of the Catholic people if a bishop would do this or that or the other. I can't remember any specific examples.
I can remember, for example, in Cuba, and this book is by Raimundo Valderez. He's a poet laureate of Cuba. He was in prison, and after the Bay of Pigs invasion or whatever, the Cuban government at the time, Fidel, had all the political prisoners in prisons that were wired for being, so they had a wired with dynamite. If they just had one man go down and pull the switch, and the whole prison would blow up, and tens of thousands of people would die. And they said, if the Americans ever come in again like that, we're going to blow you guys all up, just like that. That's the thinking. Yeah. Now this is a witness. He said, we were there. We saw it. We knew it. And it's in his book. He's a well-known writer. I read that in his book. So that's the thinking. They're going to blow up tens of thousands of innocent people as hostages to whatever they're standing for. Well,
what we have to pray for is that the popes recognize, as you said, that Our Lady is more powerful than all that, and and that the consecration will bring about blessings and not retaliation. So that's all for this installment, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Your Questions Answered.